The bus was already 20 minutes late. Vera shuffled from foot to foot, wrapped in her jacket, and with each passing moment she became more and more convinced that if it did not arrive in the next few minutes, she would have to get home either by cab or by hitchhiking. She was not happy with either option. One was too expensive, the other was downright dangerous. She was beginning to lose hope when the bright headlights finally appeared in the distance, cutting the outline of a creaky old bus out of the darkness. A relief, Vera thought, and hurried to the door, letting an elderly woman with bags get on. Now she could breathe out. She was going home. And her home was unusual. Not the kind that young girls dream of when they envision a bright future. She had inherited it from her godmother, a kind but lonely woman who had passed away a year ago. She left Vera a small village house, lost among the fields and forests. "If you want, you can try to live there," her mother said then. "If you don't like it, you can sell it and come back to us." At that time, Vera lived in a noisy, gassy city. She had just graduated from a construction college and had not yet found a job. She didn't want to agree to move to the middle of nowhere, but the thought that it was temporary added confidence. Besides, if things didn't work out, she could always sell the property and return to the city with money. But as soon as she stepped over the threshold of the house, something inside her clicked. The small but cozy house with its well-kept porch and the smell of old wood immediately became her own. Just for a week, Vera thought. What means to live on? At first she got a job in a village store, but she didn't like the work. Then Vera began to look for options in the city. The bus from the village ran regularly. She quit her job and soon came across an advertisement for operators in a call center. She went to the address. She was immediately accepted. The job turned out to be a strange but fun experience. The hall was huge, long rows of desks with partitions like tiny office cells. In each, a computer, a telephone, and a man with a headset monotonously repeating into the tube. "Good afternoon. Are you ready to answer a few questions?" The hum was as if she were in a giant beehive where hundreds of voices were intertwined, layered on top of each other. The script demanded the same thing. Vera felt like a robot. The pay was meager, but she had no choice. On the second day, a guy approached her, tall, shaggy, with a sly look in his eyes. "Hi, are you new?" Hi. "Yes. My name is Vera. And I'm Vadim," he grinned and, as if embarrassed, added. "Listen, could you lend me some money? I have nothing at all. Before the paycheck is not soon," said Vadim. Vera was taken aback. "Is this a normal practice here?" "Oh, I'm not exactly chic myself right now," she said, embarrassed. "I only have a credit card, but I don't use it much. So, let's take it off?" Vadim perked up, obviously not expecting a refusal. But Vera shook her head. "No, there will be a huge overpayment." The guy snorted, turned around and left. Suddenly, a mocking voice was heard behind her back. Vera turned around. In front of her stood a girl with bright makeup, standing out sharply among the gray office environment. "Yes." Vera nodded. She didn't? And rightly so. He asks everyone. "My name is Mariana, by the way." "Mariana?" Vera was surprised. My mom was a fan of The Rich Weep too, so she named me after the heroine. If I'd been a boy, they would have named me Juan Carlos, so I got off easy." She chuckled. Later they crossed paths in the cafeteria for snacks, but they never became friends. There was no time for friendship here. The work was like a heavy press, turning every day into an endless hum of the hive. "Mom, it's just the bottom." Vera was indignant on the phone. "No money, zero prospects, and so much work that my head is spinning." Her mother supported her as best she could, morally and financially. Sometimes she sent small remittances, and once she even sent a parcel with truckers' raw sausage, meat, nuts, dried fruit. When Vera opened the box, the appetizing smell of smoked meat hit her nose. At that moment she realized how much she missed home. "Thank you, Mom," she said quietly, holding the parcel of homemade goodies in her hands. This parcel had been a great help to her during the hard days. But it was impossible to continue living like this. Vera quit her job and decided to look for something else. After the call center, she was sure. No more endless phone conversations. No more monotonous chatter on the script. She needed a job where she could do something with her hands, not repeating memorized phrases. That's how she ended up in a garment factory. Since childhood, Vera knew how to handle threads and fabrics, and the first weeks of work even brought pleasure. Deftly handled the sewing machine, stitched even seams, But soon the bosses began to increase the workload, demanding speed and impeccable quality. They did not give a minute for a break. By the end of the shift, Vera felt wrung out like a lemon. Her back was breaking, her eyes were tired from the flickering fabric, her fingers were cramping. The salary, however, was much higher than in the call center, and she decided to be patient until spring. Maybe things will change and I'll find something better, she hoped. That evening Vera was returning home after a hard shift. She got on a bus, the last one for the day. There was not a soul in the cabin except her. No irritated passengers, no loud conversations, no annoying music, only the hum of the engine and the soft light of the old bulbs which made her want to close her eyes. Vera made herself comfortable knowing that her stop was the final one. If she fell asleep, the driver would wake her up. And so it happened. But it wasn't the driver's touch or voice that woke her up. The bus shook, rocked, and stopped. Vera opened her eyes. Her heart was pounding faster. Holy shit, she whispered, gazing into the dense forest outside the window. From the driver's seat came a sound. What's wrong? She shouted anxiously. A young driver, a little older than her, short-cropped, with a tired face, jumped out of the bus. The wheels had been punctured. On something, he exhaled doomedly. Vera frowned, looking out the window. It was pitch black outside. No streetlights, no glare from cars, not even the glow of distant villages. Just the forest, black and silent. What now? Her voice sounded bitter. To change, the driver reached for the tool. But it's dark here. And what to do? There's no cell phone service. Otherwise I would have called for help. Vera bit her lip. No cell phone service was strange. There was always a signal in this neighborhood even if it was weak. But the phone stubbornly showed no network. The driver took the flashlight and got out. She stayed in the passenger compartment. Behind the wall of the bus, tools clattered deafeningly. 10 minutes passed, he was still fiddling with the wheel. There was silence until Vera turned her head and saw lights in the distance moving slowly toward them. She froze, her heart racing. Can I help you? She shouted weakly to the driver. He lifted his head from the tire. Yes. Gather around me, tools in a box, faster to go. Vera jumped onto the road, feeling the frozen ground under her feet. Quickly began to collect the scattered wrenches and screwdrivers, trying not to delay the repair. Everything was quiet. Only the wind was howling somewhere in the distance and a muffled crackle came from the forest as if something was moving among the trees. Suddenly she froze. Along the roadside, between the trees, small greenish lights were again lit up. Oh, what is it? Vera burst out. She stretched out her arm, pointing at the strange glow. And then the driver shrieked as if he had been burned, grabbed her arm and rushed into the bus, almost knocking her to the ground. Slammed all the doors shut. What is it, aliens? Vera asked in a panic, trying to catch her breath. What the hell are aliens? The guy almost shouted. His face turned white. Look, it's wolves. Vera turned to the window. The wolves came silently, like shadows, onto the road. There were many of them, dozens of yellow eyes glimmering in the darkness. Jesus, she exhaled. The beasts approached without fear, surrounding the bus in a tight ring. Their fur glowed silver in the dim light of the headlights and their eyes glowed with a predatory gleam. Suddenly they began to howl. A long, long howl broke the silence of the night as if an icy knife had slid across his skin. What an ominous sound, Vera whispered, shivering. Shall we wait for them to leave? Into the night? We won't. Great. So now we'll be here till morning? Yeah. She grimaced. Sighing, Vera looked back at her accidental companion. By the way, my name is Vitos, the driver asked, keeping his eyes on the wolves. Vitos? Vera was surprised. She had never heard such a name. Her grandmother was from Lithuania. It was she who asked her parents to call her that. You can call me Victor if it's difficult. No, I'll remember. Vitos. It sounds nice, Vera nodded. The wolves didn't leave. They sat there as if waiting for something. There was something unusual about it. The beasts didn't growl, didn't lunge, just watched. Suddenly the howling stopped and one by one they disappeared into the darkness. What was that? Faith shuddered. They were acting too calmly. It's even more frightening. Animals understand us better than we understand them, Vito said quietly. He silently took out a thermos of coffee and a bag of pastries, handed it to her. Shall we have a drink? She took the cup, but the strange feeling didn't let go. It seemed that this was not the end. When Vitos finally gathered his courage and went out to finish the wheels, Vera stayed in the bus, watching his silhouette in the rays of the lantern. Suddenly the wolves came out of the forest again. This time the pack did not surround the bus, they stopped in the distance. One wolf slowly approached Vitos, a huge wolf with thick gray fur. He lay on his belly and crawled forward as if begging. Jesus, Vitos? Yes, he's calling you somewhere. Vera gasped. The driver froze, then said firmly, Stay on the bus. I'll follow him. Without waiting for an answer, he stepped into the darkness, taking the tire iron. The wolf led him through the roadside bushes without looking back. Vitos was no longer afraid, only a strange confidence, as if someone's voice whispered, Don't be afraid. And suddenly he realized everything. Under the fallen tree among the wet leaves lay a she-wolf. She had been crushed by a thick trunk, and now she was barely breathing. Vito's companion ran up to her and licked her ear affectionately. I'll try, said Vitos, leaning against the tree. He yanked the trunk with all his might. His muscles cramped and his fingers dug into the wood. For a moment he thought he would fail, but suddenly the tree shook, lost its footing, and rolled into the ravine. The she-wolf was free. She stood up, staggered, stepped gingerly on her paw. Limping but steady now. For a second their gazes crossed, her eyes filled with gratitude. The pack did not rush into the forest at once. The she-wolf slowly followed her companion, followed by the others. Vito stood until their silhouettes disappeared into the night, then returned to the bus and told Vera everything. She listened with her eyes wide open as if a child enchanted by a fairy tale. Oh, I should never have gone with you. She exhaled with annoyance. Maybe you should have, Vitos grinned, starting the engine. It was amazing. The bus pulled away, leaving behind the forested road and the mystery they were taking with them. Their friendship flowed into something more. They soon realized they couldn't go a day without talking, laughing, and evenings on her front porch. Tea with herbs, sunsets over the fields, silence broken only by the cries of owls. They married quietly without a grand ceremony. Vera didn't sell the house, it became their common nest. The unusual never happened again. Almost. In winter, when Vitos took the bus back along the same road, wolves sometimes came out of the woods. They walked beside him, not attacking, not hiding, as if they were seeing him off. There was recognition in their eyes. They remembered his goodness. And he, meeting their gazes, felt a strange unity, as if he spoke to them with his soul, bypassing words. One day, passing through a snowy forest, Vitos saw a gray she-wolf on a hill. She stood, proud and majestic, looking straight at him. There was no fear in her eyes, only deep, ancient wisdom. Then she turned and disappeared into the snow, vanishing between the pines like a ghost from a legend.